Hi everyone, this is the Tombatal here. Thank you all for coming and watching the rest of my Blood Bowl tutorial. I know it's been quite a while for this last part, so let's get this game started already. Now, before the game starts, I need a quick moment to point out these very important player stats that you see on the bottom right and what they do, because they influence the game very heavily. Movement allowance, or MA for short, is pretty much the more squares that your player is able to move. So if he has 6, he can move 6 squares all around him. ST is strength. This is for making blocks and defending against them, possibly one of the more important stats that you can have. The more strength you have versus your opponent's amount of strength is the amount of dice that you have to choose from when throwing a block. For example, 3 strength versus 3 strength is going to give you 1 dice to choose from when making a block. Having 4 strength versus 3 will give you 2, and having 5 or more versus 3, you guessed it, it gives you 3 dice. So having 1 more strength will give you 1 more dice. Since having creatures in Blood Bowl, they majority of the time in a game, unless you had some really powerful extraordinary creatures. So this is actually not correct though, because this is where assists come in. Assists are pretty much when a player beside you allows you to make a tackle passively. It adds a 1 strength modifier for every player next to the player making a block. Same too for opponents, okay? So it's important to see who is around you and your player that you're going to be making a block against when you're going to be making a fight. So in the video game Blood Bowl, it actually shows you when you're making a block a little +1 modifier. So it makes it pretty easy to keep track of who's going to be affecting the block when you go to make it. Agility is how well you play the ball. Picking it up, throwing it, handing it off, interceptions, so forth and so on. These all coordinate to this skill, and this is why you see players with low agility failing these actions really often. Try to cover up low agility with skills, rerolls, and plus agility items for the pros. And finally, armor value is the amount of protection you have against injury. This does not have anything to do with defending against blocks, has nothing to do with that, that's just strength versus strength. All that armor value does is it increases the likelihood that you won't be injured when you fail a block. So when your player hits the ground, having more armor value is going to protect you from getting hurt. 7 or less, for example, is a really weak player that's going to be turned into cream without proper skills and assist. I also need to discuss how blocks are done. When you block, you roll a 6-sided dice. These shown here, I'm going to put a little diagram on the screen for you. These are the kind of results that you can get with the percentages of their likelihood. So 2 out of 6 rolls, you're going to be getting a pushback roll, where your player knocks the other one really hard back. They go back 1 square, but they're still uninjured and perfectly well off. You know, it's a neutral roll. It's neither good nor bad, unless the player getting attacked is near the edge of the field. Then shit gets real. You have a 1 of 6 chance next of getting a defender down option presented in the yellow on the bottom, which attacks and knocks the player down, causing injury. This is what you want 100% of the time. You always want to get this during a block. It's the best option that you can have. Next is the defender stumbles, like I just stumbled my words. It's a combination of pushback and defender down. They get knocked back a square and injured, and it's also good to get. If you can't get defender down, go for defender stumble. They're the 2 best options. The next 2 are the bad rolls. Both down causes the player to hit the other, and for the other to counterattack, causing both of them to fall and injure themselves. This causes your turn to be over 2. So it's pretty bad. You both get injured. You know, it's not as bad as attack down, which is pretty much what it sounds like. You know, your player gets his ass kicked, and he looks humiliated, and it's fucking awful. So try to avoid that last one as much as you can. And then finally, on the bottom are the results of these two actions if you have the proper skills. Defender stumbles plus dodge, it equals a pushback rule for the defender, which terminates that as a attacking option. And then both down plus block means that the player with block doesn't go down, which causes a defender down or attacker down depending on who has the skill, defender or attacker respectively. So if you're paying attention and the player that you're attacking has both skills, dodge and block, it probably means you don't want to attack them, because they pretty much have a 5 out of 6 chance of nothing happening to them at all, or worse yet, hurting you. And that's pretty damn scary. So beware of those guys. And yeah, it's very common to see players with both of these skills running around. It's common enough to be called blodge, actually. Case in point, Amazons, they can get that really easy, so beware them at the beginning until you have the proper skills to negate that offense. I won the coin toss here, and the opponent is kicking off to me. Depending on your strategy, you may want to actually kick the ball to your opponent. I chose to receive the ball since my strategy today is to actually win. And I set my guys up in the motherfucking kill strategy as per usual. The strategy involves pretty much the same thing everybody else does, the default setup. There's nothing really to it. Sorry to ruin it for you guys. Tip number 1, ball pickup preparation. Take the bottom right unit and stick them right next to your ball in case your ball carrier isn't able to pick up the ball. This helps if the ball rolls towards you in the event of a miscarriage, and it also protects it in the case of a highly offensive blitz. This is a foreshadowing for later events, by the way. Especially with developed teams that specialize in this, like the Skaven, for example. And it also helps to develop the cage, which I'm going to be talking about very soon. For some reason, picking up the ball is just one of the hardest things to do properly, especially if your unit has low agility, as I explained earlier. It's like Blood Bowl players' gloves are coated in butter or something, and they're just constantly slipping, A unit with 3 agility has, for example, a 50% chance to have success picking up the ball, since they need at least a 3 out of the 6 to pick it up. My orc has 4 agility and only needs a +2. I decided not to have another unit sit next to the ball, which, as you can see, clearly is a mistake for you not to follow. Even with 4 agility and using a reroll, I actually failed to pick up the ball. And so this begins what I like to call one of the worst series of botched dice rolls I've ever had in a game. Turn 2, I need to secure my defensive line. The guys on the left are being pressured and I don't have enough muscle to block them straight up, so I use my unit to blitz to assist them. And I fucking roll double attacker down. Reroll saves me here, and I managed to pick up the ball this time on this turn. Tip number 2, employ a cage. This is one of the most infamously used tactics, defensive in nature, that has been used by just about every team you can play, and every player has at least some kind of variation of this tactic. And even the computer knows how to use this effectively, so you need to know how to effectively use it yourself, and you need to know how to abuse it as well. Cage is pretty much demonstrated here. It's when the ball carrier is protected with other players next to him in the shape of an X. I have 3 players here making up the X. Usually you'd have the 4th player right here. And this gives you complete coverage against pretty much everything you can throw at a ball carrier. And it kind of blitzes, unless your opponent dodges into the completed cage, where he gives the ball carrier +2 assist, pretty much able to withstand almost any kind of block. By the way, always it's a good idea to give your cage defense the tackle ability later on in the game to prevent your opponents from dodging inside, just in case. Once the cage is finished and used effectively, it gives you great holding ability, and there are only a few ways to slip the ball away without fully busting the cage, which I'm going to be talking about later. Just remind me.